Good one. I hope I'm audible to you. Am I audible and screen is visible to you? A quick yes no will help. Yeah. Okay, great, good. So there was one program which I had not demonstrated from the string, and that was once you have created a thread, you can execute or you can make a request to the operating system to run the particular thread with a specific priority. For example, if you look over here, okay, there are three constants defined in the thread class. These are minimum priority, normal priority, and a maximum priority. The minimum priority is 1, the normal priority is 5, and the maximum priority is 10. If you don't mention any priority, by default it is going to run with the normal priority. If you change the priority, like how in this particular example I have changed it, okay, so it's a request to the operating system that this particular thread of M1, which is an object of the main, should be running with minimum priority. So let's have a look at it. There is a class main having extending a thread. There is a run method. In the run method, what I do, I simply display thread.currentThread.getName, and then I display thread.currentThread.getPriority. So it is going to display the thread name. It is going to display the thread priority. Okay. So I have created an object of the main. I have created another object of the main. So two objects have been created. Kindly note run method will not run because we haven't still called the start method. So after creating an object of the main, before making a call to the start, what I do, I change the priority. So I set the priority using thread.minimum priority and thread.maximum priority. So M1 is running with the minimum priority, M2 is running with the maximum priority. Okay. And then when I say M1 start and M2 start, what should happen is it should come to the run method and it should display the get name and the get priority. So when I run the particular code, what should happen is it should display the thread name along with the priority. So if you look over here, when I say m1.start, control came to the run and it is displaying running thread name is thread.currentThread.getName, which is thread 0. And since you have set the minimum priority as 1, it is showing you thread.currentThread.getPriority as 1. So running thread priority is 1. Then I say m2.start. So again it makes a call to the run. And for the m2 we have set the priority as max priority. So now the get name, the thread name will be thread 1. This is thread 0, this is thread 1. And the get priority will be 10, the maximum priority. The maximum priority. So this was a small example I wanted to explain with the code, even though I taught you the priority. The next example was, this is actually has to do with string tokenizer. Okay, it is there in your syllabus, but ideally in the industry you won't be using this because it's a legacy class. It's a legacy. Legacy means which are there in Java 1.5, 1.6, 1.7. From 1.8 onwards, which is there in the industry, what you have to do instead of string tokenizer, you should use the string.split. String.split. But you should have an idea what is a string tokenizer. So what I do is I import java.util.string tokenizer. I create an object of the string tokenizer by saying string tokenizer st is equal to new string tokenizer. Okay. And Arun, kindly concentrate on the lecture, not on the attendance. Java is a coding language, is a string given to you. Okay. And then we have a space over here. Okay. So what has happened is Java is a coding language, is a string given over here. And there is a space over here. So what is happening is you have said the string should be broken. String should be broken on some particular token, and that token I have mentioned it as a space. So in case you want to split a string, then either you use a string dot split, which was taught to you, or if you want to use an older version, then you should create an object of the string tokenizer. You mention a string, you mention the separator. What is a separator in this case? It is a space. Okay, and then use a while loop, and then use a while loop. While st has more tokens. What is st? St is an object of string tokenizer. Has more token means as long as it has got a content. What you should do? You should display that particular token. So Java will be displayed, then is will be displayed, then a, then coding, then language. After that, there are no more tokens. The while loop will be closed. So let's try to run this. So what I have done over here, I have passed a string along with the separator to the string tokenizer, And then I use a while loop while st has more token, sop st dot next token. So what it should do, it should iterate the complete string, and the moment there is an end of the string, then what will happen? It will give me the words on a separate line. Java is a coding language. What is a, okay, now what is a token over here? Token means whatever separator you have mentioned before that, whatever it can read is a token. In this case, Java is a token, is a token, a has a token, coding is a token, language is a token. What happens if we have a separate separator? What happens if we have a separate separator? Assume that we have a comma over here. We have a comma over here. Okay. And I have entered Java is a coding language. Java is a coding language. Okay. So what has happened over here? We have a string. We don't have an array. We have a string. Okay. We have mentioned the separator as a comma. We have mentioned the separator as a comma. Now run this particular code. Now it's not in a position to split. Why it is not in a position to split? Because it couldn't find a comma as a separator. Comma as a separator. So assume that we have placed a comma over here. Okay. And now since the separator is a comma, okay, what we can do, we can split the string based on the separator. Okay, but nowadays we don't use a string tokenizer. We use something called as a string dot split, which you had learned. So string dot split is used to write a code in which we have to split the string based on a separator. Based on a separator. So these were two legacy classes. Legacy means the old classes. The legacy means the old classes. You shouldn't be using this, right now. You should be using something called as a split, and the job of this is the string tokenizer is going to break a string into the various tokens based on the space, and it has got a method called as has more tokens, which is going to analyze the each and every word. When it cannot read any more words, then what will happen, that s has more tokens will give me a false and it will come out, whereas has more tokens will give me true or false. Next token is going to give me the next word which is going to be there. Next word, it is going to be there. By default, the separator is space, but if you have a string with a separate separator, then we could use it. For example, in my second example, I use a comma as a separator. I have used a comma as a separator. Clear? The minimum priority is 1, the normal priority is 5, and the maximum priority is 10 by default. Okay, and please pay attention, you shouldn't try to optimize the code based on the priority. Okay, because priority is just a request to the operating system. Operating system is well within its right to ignore this particular priority. So normally whatever coding we do, we normally do not change the priority of the thread, because we know that the operating system, depending upon the resources, is not going to change the priority. So if you read any of the books, it will always tell you that do not try to optimize a code based on the max priority, because it's a request to the operating system. It is not an order. Okay. So the syllabus which I'm going to discuss is not there for the FA. It will be there for the next FA and ST. Okay. So this is the syllabus which will not be there for the today's exam, but it will be there for the next exam, next FA, next ST. There is one concept where each and every student should know, rather they should have gone through it, and that is called boxing and unboxing. Boxing and unboxing. We know that by default, everything is derived from the object. Everything is derived from the object. Java.language.object. Remember, Java.language.object. From that java.language.object, we have something called as a primitive type, such as byte, short, int, long, float, double. We have this particular data type: byte, short, int, long, float. Apart from that, Java gives us something called as a capital BYT, capital SHORT. These are nothing but called as a wrapper classes. These are nothing but called as a wrapper classes. So under the number, we have byte, short, integer, long, float, double as a wrapper classes for this primitive type: byte, short, int, long, float, double. For Boolean also we have Boolean with B capital, character with C capital. Okay, this is provided by the Java. Now, provided by the Java. Now, when I say integer int object is equal to 5566, what is happening is either I can simply say int I or I can say integer. Okay, but if you use integer int object is equal to 5566, then what is happening is you're trying to assign the value to an object. You're trying to assign a value to an particular object. Why? How you know it's an object? Because this particular variable is of the type integer, capital integer, which is this one. Okay. So in this case, what is happening is this particular value is assigned to an object. So which particular process goes on? The process called an boxing takes place. You're boxing an integer, a primitive type. The right hand side is a primitive type, int. The right hand side is an int. What is the left hand side? It is a class. It's an object. So we are boxing an integer to an object. To an object. Okay. This is useful for you when we'll be learning the collections. This is useful for you when you'll be learning the collection, where everything is treated as that particular class. Now, if someone says from this particular class, which is an integer class, give me the integer, then what I do, I say int I is equal to int object. Now, what is int object? Int object is nothing but a object of the integer class. So when I say int I is equal to int object, something called as a unboxing takes place. Unboxing from an integer to an integer is done by the compiler. Okay, this is done internally. This is done internally, but you as a Java student should know what is happening. And the step that is happening is, the first step is boxing, because you are boxing a value to an class or an object. And the second step is you are unboxing an object to a variable. to a variable. Similarly, for double, we have double obj is equal to 55.66. That means 55.66 is treated as a double object, and double D is equal to double object is going to convert this particular object into a double data type. Okay. Now let's run a code that basically illustrates this particular concept. So step 1, integer I obj is equal to 1, 2, 3. SOP integer dot to hex string system dot identity hash code. Kindly print the object value over here. How you can print the hash code of it? By saying system dot identity hash code. Okay, and convert it into hexadecimal. Convert it into hexadecimal. This is the hexadecimal value. Clear? Let's comment this out and we'll discuss this step by step. So there is a class main, there is a main function. I am illustrating only one point, and that is how I am assigning a value 1, 2, 3 to an integer. 1, 2, 3 to an integer. Okay. So what is integer? Integer is an object. So I am displaying that address of it by saying 36BAF 30C, which is nothing but the hexadecimal address. Okay. So let's run this. So when you run this, you will get some hexadecimal address. When I run it over here, I get 2A1139A55. Okay, I get this particular address. Fine. Now, what is the next step I told you? I should be in a position to do something like this. Int I is equal to obj. Okay, and then I will say system dot out dot print line this particular I. Clear? So this step was called a boxing. This particular step is called a unboxing, where we are unboxing an object to a primitive type. So we get your original value back. So you may ask a question why we have to learn this particular concept or why we should know this. In the next topic after the generics, which is a collection, which will be extensively used in the data structure, you should know that everything is treated as an object. Okay, and hence, whenever you are working with the primitive data type, internally it gets converted into object. That's why I introduced this particular concept called as boxing and unboxing. That was point number 1. Point number 2. If I increment the value of an object, so what was an object over here? The object was 1, 2, 3. Now here what I do, I increment an object. So when I increment an object and print the value, what I get 1, 2, 4. But strangely, when I print the hex string, that is, I print the hash code of this particular object, what should happen? It should give me a separate address. It should give me a separate address. What I expected over here was it should make a changes to the 1, 2, 3 as 1, 2, 4 at the same address, at this particular address, or at this particular address in your case. But let's see what happens when I run this particular code. So step 1, I am displaying the hexadecimal value of an object, which we call it as a hash code. After that, I use an unboxing to display the value of an integer as 123. Done. Then what I do, I increment an object. So I expected it to change to 124. That is perfectly fine. You change it to 124. But then when I print the particular address, it is not giving me the same address as 2A139A55. It is giving me a different address. It is giving me a different address. This behavior is similar to something called as strings are immutable. Strings are immutable. Strings are immutable. The same concept is applied to the wrapper class. The job of the wrapper class is to take an integer, store it as an object, okay, and then if you want to convert it back, simply use the assignment statement. But if you try to change a value to primitive type, it will change it. But if you try to change the value of a wrapper class, then what will happen? It will take me new address. It will be done at the new address. Clear? So that was a illustration I wanted to show you. String str is equal to hello. Okay, I say SOP system.identity hash code. It will give me some address. Str plus equal to world, so it should give me hello world. It will give me a hello world, but it will give me a different address. It will give me a different address. So what is the learning? The learning is something like java.language.object gives me the primitive type as well as gives me something called as a wrapper classes. If you assign a value to a wrapper classes, it is called boxing. If you try to assign an object to an integer or data, any other data type, then it will give me something called as a unboxing. It will give me something called as a unboxing. Clear? Wrapper classes, so point number one, wrapper classes are immutable. Point number one, when I refer to the feature called as boxing, it means assigning a primitive type to an object. Unboxing means assigning an object to a primitive type. Okay, assigning an integer to a object is the boxing. Assigning a object to an integer or primitive data type is called the unboxing. Is it automatically handled? Yes, it is automatically handled. Where we use it? In the collections. Where we use it? In collections. Okay. In the collections, we normally will be using this. Will it be used explicitly? No, it won't be used explicitly. What it will be doing, it will be giving me the implicit version of it. Implicitly, it is going to handle it. But internally, if someone asks you what is the process happening behind, then you should tell them that it is boxing and unboxing. If you look over here, this particular class integer, okay, this particular class integer is providing me something called as a 2-hex string. It is providing me something called as a 2-hex string, which allows me to convert the hash code into an hexadecimal string. You cannot make a changes to the wrapper class. You will have to make changes to the primitive type. For example, int I is equal to 10. You can very well say I plus equal to 1. So it will make it as 11. So you can make the changes at the same reference for the primitive type, not for the object. Not for the object. Clear? Okay. So let's hit the next topic. Yeah. If you want a mutable string, then we'll have to use a string builder or string buffer. Okay. So let's see what is generic. Generics and collection is a topic which is extensively used in data structure. It is used exclusively or extensively in data structure. Okay. To illustrate this concept, have a look at this particular class, a very simple class. There is a class student. There is a class student. Okay. I have declared age as an integer. I declared it as an object. There is a constructor. Okay. There is a constructor. And there is a display function which is displaying this particular age. Student std is equal to new student 25. What I'm doing, I'm passing a 25. I'm passing an integer. This integer is copied to or is assigned to integer. So which particular concept is invoked? Tell me, type it in the chat box. I'm passing 25, which is an integer. It is assigned to integer age. So which particular concept is involved over here? Boxing or unboxing? It is the boxing. It is the boxing. Then I make a call to the display function and I say SOP value of the age is this dot age, or you can simply type age. Which particular concept is invoked over here since you're only displaying the value? Is it similar to unboxing? Because you are only displaying it. If you want, you can assign it to an integer and display it. And display it. Kindly pay attention. I said similar. I never said it is a unboxing operation. I said similar to unboxing because you're trying to display the value of an integer. The next question coming related to this is, what will happen if I do something like this? I haven't started with generics. I haven't started with generics. Okay, this is, I'm going toward generics. So what will happen if I say student std1 is equal to new student 25? Created an object, passed 25. 25 was assigned over here. It is of the type integer. I want it to handle 25 also. Let's see what happens when I try to run it. So when I try to run it over here, it says incompatible type. String cannot be converted to an integer. String cannot be converted to an integer. But what if I want to handle both the cases? Then what to do? Then the generics will come into the picture. So let me illustrate this with an example and then I will tell you what is generics. Now, what is my aim? Let's first understand the aim. I want to write a class which can handle float, which can handle string, which can handle integer. Okay, I want a class in which it should be in a position to handle a integer, a string, and a float. Clear? Which clearly means now that I need to declare a class where I cannot mention the data type. I cannot mention the data type. Okay, I cannot say it's an integer or a character or a float because it will be in a position to handle that particular data only. So what I had to do, I had to mention the placeholder. I had to mention the placeholder. So how do you mention the placeholder? Pay attention. Class student. So what you have to say in the angular bracket, we have to say T. We have to say T. Okay. saying that this particular class is going to handle some data type called as t, which you right now don't know. There is a age variable whose data type will be t, which you don't know. There is a constructor which is going to take an age of the type t. There is a display function which is going to display the age. Clear? Understood? Now let's compare this class with the previous class which you have written. If you look over here in the previous example, we said class student. Here I am saying class student. Here I didn't mention the data type. Here I directly said this can handle integer. This is the constructor which is taken integer. This is displaying the age. I want the same class to handle the different data type. Simple. Take this line and add a angular bracket t. Take this age, drop this integer. Instead of that, you mention t. Take this constructor, drop this integer. Instead of that, you mention t. That's it. First change over here, second change over here, third change over here. Clear? So now, how do I create an object of this particular class student? So how I used to create previously, I simply used to say student std1 is equal to new student 25.5f. Now it has to change. Now you are saying student in the angular bracket float. That means this is now what? This is a float. Okay. So this std1 is an object of the student class. It is handling the float data type. New is used to create an object. 25.5 you are mentioning is a float value. So there has to be a float over here. That means float on the left hand side, float on the right hand side. This is a reference. This is an object. Both the reference and the object should have the float, even though there is a value called as 25.5f. Why it is not in a position to handle 25.5f as a float? Because it doesn't have that information. This t will get replaced with this float because of this particular line. After this line is executed, now this gets resolved to float. This is float, this is float. And when I display student1 dot display, what it should do? It should give me 25.5. Now I want to handle a string. Simple. Student string std2 equal to new student string. So this becomes a string, this becomes a string, this becomes a string, and you are passing 25. So you may ask, what is T over here? It is something like a template. It is something like a template. In this template, whatever you mention over here will be stored. Float is there? Okay, this will be float. String is there? Okay, string will be stored. Integer is there? Okay, so this will get resolved to integer. So this is a placeholder, we call it as. This is a placeholder. So student string std2 is equal to new student string 25, and this will display 25. String integer std3 is equal to new student integer 25. Okay. So in generic, what do you mean by generic? We have heard the medicine called a generic medicine. Yes or no? A generic means a common solution which will be in a position to handle different data type. If I don't use a generic, then what I will have to do, I will have to write a separate function, separate constructor to handle this particular float as well as string as well as integer. In terms of three data types being used, three constructor being used, and one display function to handle it. Do not do that. Since we know that the job is only to display it and initialize the value using a constructor, you mentioned the placeholder. Okay, this placeholder will be something which will be get resolved from line number 15. For line number 15, it is float. For line number 17, it is string. For line number 19, it is a integer. So when I run it, let's check whether it works or not. So it works and is in a position to handle all the three cases. 25.5, 25. Change this. Okay, understood. Now the question is, what will happen? First, let me copy this code for you. Okay, now what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to make this change. Instead of using wrapper class, do this and see what happens. I'm not going to show you the screen, you just analyze it. I've given you the code, make the changes and run it. The question is very simple. What will happen if I write a primitive data type such as float and int? Kindly take your own time, understand this concept. I want you to make the changes, run it first. First run the code as it is, then make the changes and run it. So what is the observation is, if you have to write a generic code, kindly do not type the primitive data type. You will have to type something called as a wrapper class. So that was a concept that is used in collection as well as generics. And why this code is so compact is, using a generic code, I'll be in a position to handle the different data type. Data type. To illustrate this concept, have you executed this code? You're comfortable? Because next step will be, you will have to write the code. I'll be giving you only the main. there is an integer array I, there is a double array. Kindly note, I am not using primitive, I am using a wrapper class. Double array D and character array C. Clear? Let's remove this. I want you to write a function which will be in a position to print all these array. Let's call the function as f. You have to write only one function which will be in a position to handle all the three data type using a concept called as generics. Using a concept called as generics. Okay, I've given you this code. Just write one function which will be in a position to display integer, double, and character. Think about it. I want you to write a function f which will be in a position to display the contents of an integer array, double array, and character array. This is the previous example generic code. Okay, got some answers. What is important is how do I write a function? So start with the normal function. What is the function name? F. What is the data type? Return type void. Do I have to make it static? Yes, I am directly making a call to it. So make it as static. That's it. Now think about what it should handle. It should handle the integer, double and character. So what we need to do? We need to make it as E. We need to make it as E. Someone asked me a question, should it be compulsorily T? No, you could have any character. You could have any character. Here, for example, I am using E. But what I know that everything is an array. Everything is an array over here. Yes or no? So I need to mention E along with the square bracket. I cannot simply mention E. I have to mention square bracket. And this becomes straightforward. This is an input array. So what it should do, it should take one element over here. That data type of the element will be E and display the content. And display the contents. So if you look over here, my complete program will be very, very simple. I have a class main. I have a print array function. I have E. My main is also in the same class. Okay, that's why I'm not putting a E over here. If it was a separate class, then mention it by creating an object of it. Okay. This is an integer. This is double. This is string. So what is the main point over here? Start with this function, then mention the input data type. Input data type cannot be integer, character, float. So what you have to do, you have to mention E or T, but we realize that it's an array, so we mention the square bracket. Return type is void. It has to be static because directly we are making a call to it. Then in between static and void, what you do, you mention this particular E, indicating that it has to handle a data type which will be resolved when you run the 13, 14 and 15 line. This is an enhanced for loop in which what we do, depending upon the data type of input array, in the first case it is an integer, in the next case it's a double, in the third case it's a character. This particular element data type should be resolved. So we make it as E, print the contents, and then we print the contents. Kindly go through it. Either you can use a percentages or you can remove the printf and have a print line and simply display the element. Percentages stands for string. If you do not want it, change it to SOP and simply say element. In case you want to display the formatted data, then you can use system.out.println. But if you're not comfortable with it, directly you can say system.out.println element. So what we have done, we have written one simple function to display the contents of integer, double and character. Have a look at this code. Similar to my previous example, okay, there is a class employee and there is a main function. Okay, there is a class employee and there is a main function. I say employee EMP1 is equal to new employee Raju. I'm passing some string over here. Employee EMP2 is equal to new employee, some employee ID is there. My task is it should be in a position to handle Raju as well as 1258. Clear? What I did was I tricked it by saying string data. That means everything is treated as a string. What I want is I want you to write over here something called as a placeholder. I want you to write some placeholder over here. Two changes have to be made so that my program should run properly. Here what I did was I use a trick. I say string data. I use a string data over here. Okay. So let me run this code. And this code runs perfectly well, and this code will run perfectly well. Okay, because what is happening in this case, Raju is given, okay, this becomes a string, okay, and then this is handled to this dot data using date.toString, which is not required, but it is required in the next case, which is 12548. So this becomes an integer, so I convert it into a string and assign to this particular data. Now what I want is, I want this as a pure generic function. That means something over here should be T, over here it should be T, and so on. So I'm giving you a code which is 90% correct, 10% is wrong. You have to make the changes in this particular code and give back the changes you have to make. And give back the changes you have to make. The question is, this program is running, kindly make it a pure generic function. I do not want a string over here. I want this as a T. So kindly make the changes in this and give me the code which will be pure generic code. So let's see how many students are in a position to do it. Yes, Vishal, let me check Vishal solution. Class employee T data, wonderful. This dot data is equal to data. Display no changes. Good. Good. So point number one, what you have to do? I told you to make it as a complete generic code. Yes or no? So first step is T. This has to be T. We do not need a toString. Display function fine. Over here, it has to be T. And over here, it is string. Right? Over here, it is string. Here it will be integer. Up. Kindly go through the following code. Okay. I hope you've gone through the example. It was pretty straightforward. We just have to replace T at two locations, which you have done. My next step is I need to create an object of the box class where the data members has to be resolved at the runtime. That means you do not know the data members data type. So there is a class box having T as a placeholder. My data member can be integer, character, float, long, double, whatever it is. I do not know it. So I will say private TT. That means data type of this lowercase t is this T, which is this particular placeholder. I have a add function whose job is to assign the value t to this dot t. I have a function called as get, which is supposed to return. So what it is going to return? It is going to return a t. There is a class main in which I instantiate two objects of this particular class box by saying box integer integer, box string string, box string string. Okay. In the first case, I deliberately don't pass any value over here and I do not write anything over here. In the next case, I write a correct code by saying box string string box is equal to new box string. So the first observation is what happens if I don't write anything over here, but I write it at the reference type. In the next case, now I need to populate this, I need to make a call to the add function. So I say integer box dot add string box dot add. In this add, what I had to do, I had to say new integer 10. New integer 10. I need to create an object of an integer class and pass the value as 10. I need to create an object of a string class and pass the value as hello world. Okay, so what is this add doing? This is getting resolved to a wrapper class called as integer in the first case, and in the next case it is a string. If you look over here, what should get do? Get should return a t. Get should return a t. So I say integer box dot get. So in this case, what is integer box dot get is going to return? It is going to return an integer. String box dot get is going to return the strings. Okay. Kindly note that all these examples, I am assuming that you have Java 8 or greater than that. You have Java 8 or greater than that. Okay. So the first step is what will happen if I don't write anything over here. Okay. In this case, it is not showing me any error. What I want you to do is I want you to open an Eclipse and run this particular code and tell me whether the type inference is done automatically or is it giving you the warning. In case of this online compiler which is working on Java 8, it is inferring it as integer and it is not giving me the particular array. What I want you to do is I want you to run the code as it is in the online compiler. Point number one. Point number two, open the Eclipse and run it and tell whether this particular code is going to give a warning or an error. This, this particular program illustrated two new things over here. Point number one, my data members, I have made it as a generic. I haven't mentioned the data member as int char float. Then this particular this particular example illustrated second concept, that how we could have a function where it can take a parameter of the type t, which you already have done. But this was something interesting, how we can have a function which is returning a t, The next concept was what should happen if I don't enter anything over here. And this is straightforward. You are making a call to the get, which will display an integer and a string. So point number one, online compilers will not give you the warning. That means you shouldn't be relying on the online compiler. Online compiler is something where you have to quickly try out a particular concept. But the production code will always be written in the Eclipse, and Eclipse says that it will give you the warning. Hence, you will have to write an integer over here. Do not go for the shortcut. Kindly write this integer over here. Kindly pay attention. Generic is not a standalone, like how exception handling is not a standalone subject. This is normally used, generics is normally used with collections. So the most comprehensive topic in Java is collections. Okay, understood? So we'll be using collection with generics as a reference point, with generics as a reference point. So all this concept which you have learned today will be used in collection. I guess you have an exam today, right? What time is the exam on the Coding Ninja? Do not use, okay, do not use excellent. Do not use excellent deprecated. Deprecated is something which will not be supported. Do not use it. Okay, all the best for your exams. Do well. We'll continue with generics again tomorrow. Okay. And this document will be uploaded today evening. You can use any other alphabet, but normally what happens, the programmers have got a convention. They say that T is something like a placeholder, T stands for template. You can use it, but no one is going to stop it if you say A, B, C, D, something like that. Any other doubts? All my notes as well as the video lectures are uploaded. Okay, all the notes are uploaded on the chalkpad except for today's lecture. Sorry, not on the chalkpad, on your drive, on your Google Drive. All these particular classes, okay, will need an object, to do the type reference of it. That's why they do not work with integer. Integer, character, float, long, double do not have an object representation. Hence the need to use a wrapper class associated with it in the collection as well as generic. There is something called as the number class. Use the base class of it, number class. In this case, whatever I am entering such as 10 will be represented as an integer. Whatever I am entering as a hello world will be represented as a string. For this particular method, add method. For this add method. If so, what, see, pay attention. Here you can mention 10 and here let's mention it as ABC. Okay, and let's run it. Now in this case, what is happening is this particular 10 over here was assigned to this using the concept called as boxing. Yes or no? And over here also the same concept was used. If you want to use directly, you can still use it directly over here. Why it is in a position to work directly? Because we have already resolved a data type over here when we are creating an object. Is it clear? Okay. So tomorrow we'll continue with generics and we'll continue with collection. So tomorrow we are going to continue with generics and collection. So generics is normally a small topic which is used extensively in collection. Which is extensively used in collection. Okay. So that will be the end of the class. Do well in the exams. Okay.